So according to Greg Kading, Poochie Biggie.
That's the story I believe.
And Poochie was an associate of Suge?
Whatever the story is that Greg is pushing is what I believe.
So, you know, you hear it say, pow, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. It was 5 or 6 cars, like, pop, 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 pop. And as we coming back, we see the guy turning the corner from the corner. He was parked on the corner because there's no way he could have got on the side unless his car was already parked there. You understand what I'm saying?
For as long as hip-hop has been around, gangsters have made life a living hell for rappers. Back in the day, being a rapper wasn't just about spitting fire and dropping hits. It also came with the constant fear of being caught in the crosshairs of some notorious gangsters. Biggie Smalls, for instance, spent his last days being worried that his life might have been at risk.
Somebody's trying to me. I'll be waking up paranoid. I'll be really scared.
Words were that he was being allegedly hounded by Poochie till he was offed.
So according to Greg Kading, Poochie Biggie.
That's the story I believe.
And Poochie was an associate of Suge?
Then there is 50 Cent, who had a near-death brush with the Supreme Team.
You've been shot. How many times have you been shot?
9 times.
9 times.
Yeah, it was only one situation though. It was one.
Well, yeah, okay. But they kind of went for it, didn't they?
Yeah.
These stories just keep piling up, and it makes you wonder how far these gangsters would actually go once they set their sights. Let's dig into the chaos. First up on this wild ride is Timothy McGee, a name that struck fear far beyond the streets of LA. This guy wasn't just your average gang leader. He ran the Toonerville gang with a chilling reputation for violence and an insatiable thirst for chaos.
He was the leader of the Toonerville gang in Atwater Village, a community in northeastern Los Angeles. Always felt that he was an aspiring rapper. He was always writing.
A lot of them had to do with that he did.
Rappers, civilians, rivals, no one was safe from his wrath. So on October 17th, 1999, the rap group Thaw Dog Pound is chilling on the patio of Echo Sound Studio. After a hard day's work on Corrupt's Thaw Street is a Mutha. It's late, around 11:40 p.m., when McGee and another guy show up out of nowhere and unleash a hail of bullets. The aftermath was tragic. Dwayne Dupree, Corrupt's close friend and bodyguard, took multiple shots to the chest and tragically lost his life. Javon Joves wasn't spared either. He got hit in the foot, while Willard Givers ended up with a bullet lodged in his calf. The studio patio turned into a war zone in seconds. Rumors quickly spread that this ambush was tied to something on Corrupt's upcoming album, though no one really knew for sure. McGee's reasons for the attack remain a mystery to this day, but one thing's for sure: the man didn't stay free forever. He got arrested in February 2000 for violating parole from a previous charge, but like the slippery criminal he was, he didn't stay behind bars for long. However, karma caught up eventually. By January 9th, 2009, his luck ran out. He was sentenced to death and now sits on death row, his bloody legacy haunting the streets he once ruled.
Leader, described by police as a thrill, is headed for death row at San Quentin.
You are sentenced to death.
Next up, we've got George Williams, a name that's as infamous as it gets in the Death Row Records saga. A guy who went from being Suge Knight's trusted hitman to one of his deadliest enemies.
George Williams was a mob pirate, and the guy was a hitman. He's straight. He was the real deal.
Back in the early 90s, Suge was building his empire, and part of that included assembling a hit squad made up of heavy hitters from the Looters and the Mapiru gangs. George was one of Suge's personal picks, and through him, Suge met Poochie, bringing him into the fold too. Suge wasn't just recruiting. He was funding the chaos, dropping $200,000 on drugs and guns to get the gang into serious business, turning them into a force to be reckoned with in the drug and gun trade. At first, George was Suge's go-to guy, a permanent fixture at the studio and the muscle you didn't want to cross. He carried out hits for Suge for years and quickly became one of the most feared names in the game. But as time went on, cracks started to show. Suge began playing favoritism, showering Poochie with lavish gifts like houses and expensive toys, while George felt like he was left with scraps. That brewing resentment came to a head during a heated argument between Suge and George, and depending on who you believe, things got even messier. Some say George was skimming money from Suge, which led to his firing and demands to return all the gifts he'd been given. Others say George was set up as a scapegoat. Either way, George wasn't about to give back a single thing. He felt he'd earned it, blood and all.
Were all these fights and stuff, was it over death row related, or was it just like street type of stuff?
Both. Some internal fighting that was going on behind some looters' part, mob guys that had got disassociated from death row. Some shootings went down behind. It always generally behind money, on paychecks or cars or something like that a lot of the beef happened. A lot of it came from some guys from Fruitown.
Suge, furious and allegedly scared of what George might do, decided to take him out. He went on to orchestrate a brutal ambush. George was lured to a secret location where Suge's crew beat him, tortured him, and even shot him. But somehow George survived, escaped, and went into hiding. And that's when the real war started. George regrouped, pulling in members from rival factions and turning the streets into a battlefield. His retaliation was vicious. He had one of Suge's close associates, Heron, assassinated in broad daylight, a hit that sent shockwaves through the gang world.
And they were after Heron. And apparently when Heron left to go back to the mob area, he went down Rosecrans. And the crazy part about it is, he was in his car.
From there, the bloodshed spiraled out of control. George became a one-man wrecking crew against Suge and his crew. There were ambushes, kidnappings, executions. Even Poochie, Suge's right-hand man, wasn't safe. In August 2000, Poochie and his friend William were attacked while sitting in a van, leaving William dead and Poochie severely injured.
He was hanging out with a guy when he got shot. Before he got, he was with a guy that was from Fruitown area. And that's the guy that was from Fruitown area that allegedly shot him. And he was in Fruitown area when he got shot. Not shot the first time.
One time before that?
He was in a car with a guy named Chin that got and he was in the car and he got shot.
George was rumored to be behind it. The violence didn't stop there. Suge's inner circle was systematically torn apart. One by one, key members were offed in increasingly brutal ways. By 2005, George and his new ally Lil Rod had pivoted to running a massive PCP operation, flooding South Central and Compton with drugs. When the feds finally raided their setup, they seized 175 kilograms of PCP, dozens of weapons, and a pile of cash. Both George and Lil Rod were convicted and sent away for years. Fast forward to 2021, and George is out of prison, supposedly laying low. But his story still lingers like a ghost in the world of hip-hop. Next on this twisted saga, we've got Poochie, the infamous hitman who earned his deadly reputation under Suge Knight's reign. A man whose name became synonymous with murder and mayhem in the hip-hop world. You'll remember him as the guy George Williams introduced to Suge, and from that moment on, Poochie became one of Suge's go-to enforcers. His rap sheet of violent deeds is long, but the one that cemented his legacy was his alleged role in the murder of Biggie Smalls, an act of revenge tied to the fallout from Tupac's tragic death.
So according to Greg Kading, Poochie Biggie.
That's the story I believe.
And Poochie was an associate of Suge?
Whatever the story is that Greg is pushing is what I believe.
When you hear the theory that Poochie was the shooter, what is your take on it?
Right on.
Was Poochie known as a shooter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a hitter for real, for real.
When Tupac was offed, Suge took it personally. Tupac wasn't just an artist, he was Suge's golden goose, and his loss hit hard on both a personal and business level. While Suge was locked up for a probation violation, he began plotting his revenge. Using his girlfriend Teresa as a messenger, he orchestrated a hit on Biggie. The plan unfolded in whispers, Suge sending Teresa off with instructions to recruit Poochie, even slipping directions to her while Suge's lawyer conveniently stepped out for a smoke. Poochie agreed to the job for 2 payments, $9,000 up front and another $4,000 later. With the plan in motion, Suge's crew tracked Biggie's every move while he was in LA promoting Life After Death. On March 9, 1997, Biggie attended a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. As his SUV stopped at a red light on Wilshire and Fairfax, Poochie allegedly pulled up, opened fire, and disappeared into the night. Biggie was hit 4 times and later died at the hospital.
Yo, somebody in the car pointing a gun at Big and them. I goes to open the door. So you know, you hear it say, pow, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. It was 5 or 6 cars, it was like, pop, 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 pop. And as we coming back, we see the guy turning the corner from the corner. He was parked on the corner, because there's no way he could have got on the side unless his car was already parked there. You understand what I'm saying?
Years later, George Williams, now estranged from Suge, reportedly confirmed in a prison letter that it was Poochie who pulled the trigger. Poochie's blood-soaked reputation only grew from there. At one point, he, George, and others were allegedly involved in the daylight emder of Heron. The attack was brazen. A Compton intersection turned into a war zone as automatic weapons blazed. Heron and his passenger, Allen, were both offed. The K-Ings didn't stop there, but despite the chaos, Poochie and George evaded charges for Heron's emder. As George began switching allegiances, aligning with Lil Rod of the Fruittown Piru, tensions escalated between their crews and Suge's remaining allies. In the April 2000 attack on Poochie and his friend Willie, Willie was emdered, while Poochie was left seriously injured and confined to a wheelchair for months. The streets whispered that Lil Rod was behind it, and retaliation was swift and brutal. Lil Rod's ally Vince was abducted by men posing as cops, tortured on tape, and emdered. The blame pointed squarely at Poochie and another associate. The violence escalated further, Freeway, allegedly by Poochie and Willie Walker's brother. It was an endless cycle of revenge, with neither side backing down, but Poochie's own fate was sealed on July 24, 2003, when he was ambushed while speeding down Central Avenue on his motorcycle. Allegedly, Lil Rod's crew caught up to him, opening fire with an AK-47. Poochie was shot 10 times in the back and died instantly.
Might have been 2000, and then when he get 2004, 2005.
Something like that, yeah.
So, during that time period.
Riding his motorcycle, right?
He was on a motorcycle. Farmer came back on Pooch hard, because he got shot on a motorcycle, riding down Central.
Now let's talk about Jimmy Henchman, a name that rings through the industry for all the wrong reasons. A man whose reputation as a ruthless producer was only rivaled by his dangerous exploits off the charts. If Suge Knight was the king of chaos, Jimmy Henchman wasn't far behind. He had beef with some of the biggest names in hip-hop, Tupac, 50 Cent, and even Suge himself. And trust, his story is as wild as they come. Let's rewind to his grudge with Tupac. The bad blood boiled down to hypocrisy, jealousy, and some brutal street justice. Jimmy didn't just dabble in the music scene. He came up as a drug dealer and robber. So when he realized that music could rake in more money than the streets, he partnered with Haitian Jack to manage artists. Haitian Jack introduced Tupac to the high life, rubbing elbows with stars like Madonna. But Tupac, ever the rebel, dismissed Jimmy and Jack as mere hanger-ons, publicly calling them out during his trial. That dig cut deep, and Jimmy, already simmering, wanted to teach Pac a lesson. Dexter Isaac, who later admitted that Jimmy hired him for the infamous 1994 Quad Studios robbery where Tupac was ambushed, shot, and robbed of $40,000 in jewelry. Dexter pocketed $2,500, while Jimmy claimed a diamond ring for his girlfriend.
It was like a handcuff bracelet, the balls with the diamonds on it. You know that. He had another bracelet that was like a bicycle chain with charms on it, all right? Should I say that? All right, he had the diamond chain on, with the chain with diamonds at each length going through it. Right, he had a big stone on the diamond ring and a smaller stone, one for $35,000 and the one for $20,000. All right. Even stretch.
Tupac, who miraculously survived, later accused Jimmy of orchestrating the attack, describing the moment as a betrayal that targeted him, not his crew. This feud set the tone for much of the chaos that followed. Fast forward a bit, and Jimmy had shifted his sights to 50 Cent. By 1996, Jimmy had established his own label, Czar Entertainment, managing the game, who famously clashed with 50 Cent.
I'll tell you, the poison in that was Jimmy Henchman.
Do you think that was the
Jimmy Henchman never liked Chris Lighty.
Oh.
He never liked Chris Lighty.
Things took a dark turn when G-Unit members Tony Yayo and Lodi Mac harassed Jimmy's 14-year-old son, slapping him during an argument. The assault enraged Jimmy, and while both men faced legal consequences, Lodi going to prison and Yayo getting off with community service, the fallout was deadly. Lodi was emdered after his release, an act prosecutors tied directly to Jimmy, allegedly in exchange for 2 kilos of coke. The vendetta spiraled out of control. Yayo's mother's house was shot at, his Bentley riddled with bullets, and even a bulletproof G-Unit vehicle was blown up with bullets. It was open warfare, and Jimmy wasn't shy about sending messages. There were even claims of assassination attempts during the filming of I Still K with Akon. But Jimmy didn't stop with 50. Even Suge Knight felt his wrath. At the 2005 MTV Video Music Awards, Suge was shot in the leg at a party hosted by Kanye West. Eyewitnesses recalled Jimmy orchestrating the whole scene like a Hollywood director. As Suge leaned on the bar, exhaling a perfect cigar smoke ring, Jimmy signaled to someone in the shadows. Moments later, a man appeared and shot Suge on the spot. The brazen hit left everyone stunned. Jimmy Henchman's legacy is a trail of violence, revenge, and chaos that blurred the lines between the music industry and the street life he never really left behind. Whether it was orchestrating robberies, ordering hits, or stirring up feuds with the industry's giants, Jimmy's name remains etched in hip-hop history, not for beats, but for bullets. Next up, we've got the infamous Supreme Team, one of the most feared and respected crews to ever run the streets of New York City. Back in the 80s, South Jamaica, Queens was their stomping ground, with Kenneth Supreme McGriff calling the shots and his nephew Gerald Prince Miller handling the muscle. These two were like a perfect storm. Supreme's sharp mind for business and Prince's knack for keeping everything in line made them unstoppable. At their peak, they were raking in an insane $200,000 a day. But they weren't just street legends, they were cultural icons, blending the grit of hustling with the swagger of hip-hop. Back then, rappers, athletes, and street hustlers all moved in the same circles. But the Supreme Team, they were the trendsetters, the ones everyone wanted to be or be around. Guys like LL Cool J and Nas turned their stories into bars, making them immortal in the rap game. Fast forward to the 2000s, and the connection between hip-hop and the streets got real messy, especially when 50 Cent went head-to-head with Emder Inc. But the beef wasn't just about music, it was personal. At its core, it was 50 versus the Supreme Team, and it all started with 50's track Ghetto Quran. This wasn't just a song, it was basically a street history lesson breaking down Supreme's empire in raw detail. Lines like, "Yo, when you hear talk of the South Side, you hear talk of the team/C ninjas, feared Prince and respected Preemie / for all you slow mother effers, I'ma break it down, iller / C Preemie was the businessman and Prince was the KR.
You slow mother I'ma break it down, iller. See Preem was the businessman and Prince was the remember?
Didn't sit well with McGriff. It's said that Supreme took it as a direct insult and decided to make an example out of 50. That's when Daryl Homo Baum allegedly stepped in. Baum wasn't just some random thug. He was a key player in the drug scene and Mike Tyson's best friend. Tyson had even brought him on as part of his security team after they met in prison. But Baum's story turned dark when he reportedly took on the job of taking out 50 Cent. In 2000, outside his grandmother's house, 50 was ambushed. As he got into his car, Baum allegedly opened fire with a 9mm, hitting him 9 times, hands, legs, face, arms, and hips. But 50 survived, spent 2 weeks in the hospital and took months to recover.
You've been shot. How many times have you been shot?
9 times.
9 times.
Yeah, it was only one situation though. It was one.
Well, yeah, okay. But they kind of went for it, didn't they?
Yeah.
And in a crazy twist, Baum himself was gunned down just weeks later, an eerie coincidence 50 later reflected on in interviews.
Did you ever find out who did it?
Yeah, I know who did it shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are now where?
Oh, the guy who actually shot me is dead.
While 50 lived to tell the tale and build a career off it, another rapper linked to this web of violence, E-Moneybags, wasn't as lucky. His fate was tied to a beef with the Supreme Team that started when he allegedly offed Black Just, one of Supreme's closest associates. Rumor has it that E-Moneybags was actually gunning for Supreme but missed, hitting Black Just instead, who bled out from the wound. Supreme didn't take that lightly. A few years later, E-Moneybags was ambushed in brutal fashion. Sitting in his car, he was sprayed with bullets, hit 10 times and offed on the spot. Then there was Gerald Prince Miller, McGriff's cousin, who stepped into the spotlight when McGriff got locked up for drug charges back in 1987. While McGriff was all about smooth negotiations and keeping things under control with his charm, Prince had a totally different vibe. He ruled with an iron fist, and under his leadership, the Supreme Team didn't just keep the money flowing. They cranked it up to about $500,000 a week. But with that cash came chaos. Violence became more common. And while a string of homicides was linked to the crew, none of them ever stuck directly to Prince. Eventually, the law caught up to him. In March 1990, Miller was arrested and by 1993 sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms for DT's ficking. Unlike Miller, who's still behind bars, McGriff managed to see the outside world again, though not without controversy. And then lastly, there's Tyrone Tata Moore, a name that carried weight on the streets and a reputation tied to some of the wildest stories out there. Tata's connection to the Supreme Team ran deep, and rumors swirled that he was one of the shooters in the infamous 2000 hit on 50 Cent. This wasn't just idle gossip either. 50 himself threw shade Tata's way on his mixtape Guess Who's Back, making it clear he wasn't about to let that slide unnoticed. But that was just the start of Tata's roller coaster. Fast forward to August 29, 2003, and things turned into something straight out of an action movie. NYPD rolled up on Tata, looking to question him about the shooting of a police captain. Cornered and desperate, Tata took a drastic step. He held his own nephew, a close friend, and her 6-year-old kid hostage. Imagine the scene. NYPD swarming the place, tension thick in the air, and Tata inside with his hostages. It was a wild standoff that lasted 2 hours, but somehow it ended without anyone getting hurt. Even though he dodged charges for the police captain shooting, Tata still had to pay the price for the hostage situation. Life didn't slow down for Tata, though. By December 2004, trouble came knocking again, this time outside Club LQ in Manhattan. Tata's brother, Troy Moore, got caught in a shooting. Troy survived, but their friend William Clark wasn't as lucky. The streets were buzzing with talk, speculating whether it was retaliation tied to the 50 Cent shooting. But like a lot of street drama, nothing ever stuck. After that, Tata laid low, at least in the public eye, but his name didn't completely fade away, thanks to his connection with Sandra Peppa Denton from Salt and Peppa. As the father of her son, Tyron Denton Jr., Tata's name popped up here and there on VH1's The Salt and Peppa Show, and later on growing up hip-hop. Peppa's ties to street legends even sparked rumors that her son might have been fathered by Houston gangster Carl Smitty Smith, but Tata's name still held its own weight in the conversation. Then, in 2022, the story took a somber turn. Tata passed away, and the streets were buzzing with speculation about what really went down. Theories flew around, but the truth behind his death remains a mystery, leaving behind a legacy of drama, power, and a lifetime of stories that still echo through the streets. And there you have it. Thanks for watching, guys.